just think that that trivializes the extreme danger that he poses to the future of our country and frankly to the future of the American people. And we'll get into a lot of that as the town hall unfolds. But there are just so many examples, and it's not just his racism or his misogyny or his incompetence. I think that Donald Trump is actually a pretty strategic, methodical guy when it comes to the damage that he's doing to our country. So we'll get a chance to talk about all of that. We're just really happy that you're here. I am pleased to be able to introduce our guests, our panel to you tonight. I'm very happy to have Susan Del Percio with us. I know a lot of you already know Susan and who she is. She is a member of the steering committee for the Lincoln Women. She is a Republican strategist and a political commentator. Susan, thank you so much for being here tonight. Great to have you. We also have Beth Fukumoto, who's a former representative from the beautiful state of Hawaii, where Beth served as the youngest person, I believe, to ever hold the position of minority leader in the House in Hawaii, and the youngest woman to ever hold a caucus position in the United States. So Beth, that's extraordinary accomplishments. And thank you so much for joining us tonight as well.
Thanks for having me.
Great. And then finally, we have with us conservative columnist from the Washington Post, Jennifer Rubin. Everybody on this call I know already reads Jennifer's column. And if you don't, you should be. It's not just because she's a woman and she's conservative. It is clever. It is smart. And I've been reading you a long time, Jennifer. Thank you for being here. We should be clear, Jennifer is not a member of Lincoln Project. She's here as our special guest tonight. Jennifer, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. And let me also introduce you to the guy that keeps the trains running on time when it comes to anything digital at the Lincoln Project, Ron Steslow. Ron is going to be, I don't know what to call you tonight. Are you the captain of the pirate ship today?
I'm here to serve, Jennifer. I'm here to serve.
Here to serve, and we're happy to have you. Ron is going to kind of run the operation behind the scenes, and your opportunity to ask questions. And in fact, Ron, take a minute and explain to everybody how it's going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to do as much on Q&A tonight as we can after our opening remarks. And if you'd like to ask a question, there should be a Q&A button down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Just hit that, type your question into the queue, and we'll be pulling straight from there. We also had a lot of questions come in before the event, so we'll be getting to those right up front if you submitted a question in advance. And for tonight, I'm going to be reading the questions so that we can get through as many of them as we can instead of trying to bring you on live so that we avoid any technical issues. And with that, I'll pass it over to Jennifer to kick us off.
Terrific, thank you. So let me give you the 30-second background on what I want my experience is, or had brought me to this moment to be, becoming a founder of the Lincoln Project and being so involved in it is, I've spent my entire adult life saying that everything that I do is kind of inspired by or led by the commitment I have to my children, how much I love them, how much I feel, so deeply a responsibility to make sure that we leave for them and our grandchildren. By the way, I'm a grandmother now. I have 3 grandchildren. So I really feel, I believe most parents feel this responsibility to leave a better America for them than we, had the privilege and opportunity to grow up in ourselves. And I believe that unlike anything else our country has ever faced in my lifetime, that Donald Trump poses an extraordinary and direct threat to being able to do that. So I've been involved in this. I've run for Congress. I have been a state party chairman. And the first time that I ever spoke up against Donald Trump was in April of 2011, when he came to New Hampshire to dip his toes in the waters in the 2012 cycle. And I always say was scared away by Mitt Romney. So that's kind of what has led me to this moment in time. And Susan, if you could take a couple minutes and kind of share your thoughts with folks as well.
Sure. I've spent the last 30 years in government politics in the private sector. And throughout, it used to be good government is good politics. And that's what used to get us through together, people working together. And when I saw what was happening with Donald Trump, when he came on board in 2015, I never supported him. But when he was elected president, I said, all right, I'm not going to say I'm a never Trumper because I wanted to give him a chance. And right off the get-go, he didn't care. He just wanted to do what he wanted to do. And it was heartbreaking to see how not only what Donald Trump did, but the rest of the Republicans did in falling in line and enabling him to do his behavior. So when I heard what was going on at the Lincoln Project, I was like, I am all in, because he must be stopped.
Thank you so much for that. And Beth, you have a unique story to tell as well.
Yeah, so I started with the Republican Party in 2008. I had just graduated from Georgetown with a master's degree in English into a recession. And so there was nothing I could do for a job. Nobody was hiring, but they were hiring at the legislature. So I got a job there. And what I saw when I was there, I come from a state that is majority Democratic, has been since 1954, very, very Democratic. They've had a super majority for most of that time. And the monolithic thought, the fact that they all felt like they always needed to agree and rubber stamp whatever it was that the speaker wanted, whether or not it was good for the community, was frustrating to me. And I got frustrated. I felt like my community was suffering. I was having trouble finding a job. I came to the conclusion that these principles that had guided the state since 1954 were not ones that could bring us forward. So I joined the Republican Party. I ran as a Republican. And a lot of the reason why I did that was because I truly believed that the Republican Party was going to be the place where there would be room for diversity of thought and disagreement and healthy, productive dialogue. And I quickly, in the interest of not taking up too much time, I quickly realized that that was not true anymore once Donald Trump got on the campaign trail and started really picking up speed.
Thank you very much. It's good to have you, Beth. And Jennifer, please take a few minutes as well. I know you have great insight to share.
Thank you. And thank you for having me again, and to everyone who's spending some time to take a few minutes to hear from women. I have two interests, actually, that I am here to talk about. One as a reporter, and secondly, as a book author. I am in the process of writing a book on the revolution of women in the era of Trump. Both women, primarily Democrats, who were not politically involved. Some of them barely knew who their representatives were, who organized themselves. Some of them ran for office. Some of them joined campaigns. And some of them ran for president, and one of them became vice president, or vice presidential nominee. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. The thesis of the book, and I think we're really seeing this play out. We saw it last week, we saw it this week, is that women are the determining factor, that the awakening of women, the shock, the horror of Donald Trump really woke up a lot of American women. As a lot of you political junkies know, African-American women, Latino women have always been strong supporters of the Democratic Party, but white women have not. They have tended to prioritize, if you will, race over gender, or race over even economic benefit. And that has changed dramatically under Donald Trump. Part of that is the general exodus from the Republican Party of women. Part of that is the introduction of new women who perhaps were not involved or didn't vote, and they have added as well. We saw the first hint of this in 2018, when, of course, we not only saw a huge turnout of women, but we saw a record number of women elected to the House. And I think we will see many of those people who either didn't make it last time, and certainly the ones who were elected be reelected. It's interesting that I don't think any of the women freshmen are really at any risk in 2020 in terms of their House seats. So I attempt to explain how this came about, and more importantly, what it means. And let me focus on the second part of that for just a moment. I think over the last 20, 30, 40 years, what we know is the gender gap has grown and grown and grown. Part of that is because of the increasing ideology and the increasing polarization of our two political parties. And that women and men do tend to look at political issues differently. And at least for the foreseeable future, I don't think anyone imagined that that was going away. Now, Donald Trump comes along and he blows that up into a gigantic chasm. And there's lots of ways and lots of reasons he did that. Part of it is his stance on issues. A lot of it is his behavior, his tone, obviously his misogyny, his racism, his complete tone deafness to the issues that concern women. And the Democrats have been carefully watching this and carefully, to my mind, thankfully, capitalizing on this. What we saw last week was the most women-centric convention I have ever seen in my life. More women speakers, for, about, and to women. And that is not a coincidence. In fact, I was on the phone today with one of the senior Biden people, and they said, we believe this election runs through the women's vote, that is our target, that whoever winds up winning, that's however you want to describe it, the suburban vote, the college-educated women vote, white women vote, that is really going to be the success or failure of the Biden campaign. And what we've seen this week is, of course, a shouting fest, many of the same behaviors that have turned off women in terms of the dog whistles, the bullhorns, whichever you like, in terms of racism, the monochromatic nature of the Republican Party, and their real inability to grapple with the horrible reality that people are facing in terms of economic anxiety, economic dislocation, of course, the pandemic, and then lastly, in terms of really this, I think, awakening cross-culturally, cross-politically, cross-generationally, in terms of systematic racism. And I imagine, the suburban woman, I'm not going to call her a housewife because I don't think that term has been in fashion for about 40 years, but the suburban woman who may have voted for Donald Trump in 2016. Either she couldn't stand Hillary Clinton, or she thought, this is a protest vote, he's not really going to win. But now they look at this, and I think they see a circus over there. I think they see people who are not in control of themselves, let alone in the country. And I think the Biden ability to draw that contrast between someone who is calm, collected, reasonable, responding to issues on a factual basis, problem solving, is the way that he's going to be able to exploit, if you will, this progression of women from the Republican Party. I see nothing so far on the Republican side that attempts to recognize this, let alone remedy this. So that's the book I'm working on. That's what I'm looking at a lot during the campaign. And hopefully some of the people on this call are those women who have, in fact, gotten radicalized, mobilized, politicized because of the election of Donald Trump.
That's terrific. Thank you so much, Jennifer. Two things quickly. First, I think that housewife term is probably 55 years out of fashion, not just 40. And, you talked about the revolution of Democratic women in the 2018 cycle. We don't have very many Republican women even running in 2020, but let's hope this is the year that, the average American Republican woman becomes part of the revolution. So Ron, you want to get us started on some questions?
Yeah.
We'll get as many as we can.
We've got piles of questions here. So I'm going to get through these as quickly as we can here. Ann Michelson writes, can you discuss how to talk to someone who says they will only vote for someone who is pro-life? Finding the loss of lives due to COVID is not enough because they blame China.
Right. Let me take that one at least to get started on it, because I'm a little bit surprised at the beginning of all this, but no longer. Every time I do anything for the Lincoln Project, somebody asks that question: How do we talk to our pro-life friends about Joe Biden? And here's what I would say, because this is something I've talked about since I ran for Congress 12 years ago. That the Republican Party, and under Donald Trump, the Republican Party can no longer call itself the party of life. They may be the anti-abortion party, which is something, but they are not the party of life. Donald Trump has displayed more disrespect and disregard for human life and human dignity than any president I can remember in my adult lifetime. And it's not just the pandemic, but that should be a powerful message to people. 177,000 American lives lost unnecessarily. I don't blame Donald Trump for the virus, but I absolutely hold him directly accountable for an extraordinary loss of life that could have been avoided. But how do you call yourself the party of life if you support, for any reason, the idea of putting children into cages and feeding them between the bars and leaving them there without family or connection? And by the way, some of them have still not been reconnected to their families. That is not the party of life. How can you be the party of life if, when faced with this pandemic, one of your surrogates says, you know, I know a lot of grandparents who would be happy to sacrifice their life so that their grandchildren could, you know, have a better economy in the future. That is not the party of life. I mean, you can, the way that this president demeans and dehumanizes women, minorities, disabled, veterans who were prisoners of war. He doesn't just, you know, off the cuff kind of like insult people. He dehumanizes them. That is not the party of life. So that is my most sincere, passionate argument that I can make on it. And I hoped, you know, hope against hope that gets through to people.
I would point to a new ad that's up, I believe just today, from our friends at Republican Voters Against Trump. There is another insider from the Department of Homeland Security, a woman who begins her testimony, if you will, by saying, I'm a Christian and I voted for Donald Trump because of the life issue in 2016, and I'm not doing it anymore. And she then goes on to explain why. And I think it is a powerful testament. The Democratic Party is not asking that anyone give up their beliefs or their positions on various issues. They're asking for a vote because we have a choice. This is a referendum. It's a referendum on Donald Trump. No one says you have to agree with Joe Biden on everything or anything. You simply have to recognize that we are an inflection point in our country, and that really the lives of hundreds of thousands, if not more, Americans, the survival of our democracy is at stake. And that, for many of us, has to take priority over differences we may have on specific issues. Unless we preserve the democracy, unless we have a functional government and that can protect us from the COVID virus and actually develop and implement a vaccine program, which I have sincere doubts the current administration would be able to do, the rest of it is irrelevant. And I think it's a matter of prioritization. And again, you're going to have a lot of Republicans, be they men or women, who are going to cross over and say, I don't agree on the Biden camp or the Democratic Party on a whole list of issues, but here's why I have to make this choice. We don't have many elections like this. I think if we went back to 2008, 2012, and we said, you know, the candidate I wanted or the candidate I didn't want won, but the country would not have ended if the other guy had won. That is not true right now. It is not a morally neutral choice. It is not purely a policy choice in this election.
Right. Agreed. That's agreed. Okay, Ron.
All right. Yeah. We had lots of questions on that. We had lots of questions on that topic. So thank you for taking some extra time to answer it, including Carolyn Keenan, who asked a very similar question. I'm going to read two that are very similar. One from Barbara Saltzman, who says, I'm terrified that none of our country's checks and balances are working. What can we do? And Cecilia Kramer, more specifically, says, everyone keeps talking about the laws this administration is breaking, such as the Hatch Act during their convention. Is there anything being done? Or is Congress just going to hold more hearings that lead to nothing?
Yeah, that's infuriating to watch the total lack of accountability for laws. And for me, I always think, oh my God, if this was Barack Obama doing this, you know, what would Mitch McConnell say then? Susan, I think those are good questions for you.
Sure. I think when we talk about our separation of powers and is our democracy holding up, the answer is yes, but barely. We have seen the courts do a really good job when it's appropriate to rein in this administration. We've seen a lot of good decisions. My biggest concern is, and when people ask me, you're a Republican, how are you voting for Biden? I said, I can live with 4 years of policy that I don't agree with, that I even deem bad. But I cannot live with the consequences of Donald Trump in the White House for 4 more years, for fear that our institutions will not hold. There's cracks in those pillars at the Justice Department. Another 4 years, they can crumble. When we look at his treatment of the media and how he's divided us as a country as to having, to quote Kellyanne Conway, alternative facts, that is something that divides us beyond anyone's expectations. So I think at this point, yes, we're holding, but boy, are we close. And I don't know if we can survive another 4 years. As far as being held accountable by the Congress, you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. Not much is going to change in the next 3 months. Congress will do what they're doing. He is, in fact, breaking lots of laws. Unfortunately, some of them he's in charge of enforcing. We had that problem with Kellyanne Conway earlier in the administration where he said, yeah, so what? But that's the character of the individual. And that's why I signed on with the Lincoln Project, because it's not just about Trump, but I am infuriated at all of the Republicans that went lockstep with Donald Trump and allowed him to have this behavior, starting with Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, that instead of punching him in the nose saying, no, you can't have it, they acquiesced, and he just never stopped.
And that's why the Lincoln Project is dedicated to defeating Trump and Trumpism, why we've expanded our targets, to those who have allowed this to happen, those people who have constitutional responsibility not to allow such a thing, and they've abandoned their responsibility to checks and balances. What's next, Ron?
Okay, we're going to go to Dawn, I don't know how to say her name, but Segalink, I believe. How would you recommend responding to people who claim Biden has dementia? Fox has brainwashed people into thinking this is true, and this is the pushback I get most of the time with Trumpers.
Well, my quick and easy answer is send them the video of Joe Biden's acceptance speech at the convention. Any such doubt should be laid to rest. And there's a bunch of them out there, a bunch of videos out there that show Donald Trump and Joe Biden side by side, and let you decide how the best, let your friend decide who they think might be stable or unstable. So that's an easy one for me. Okay, Ron, we're going to keep it going. We're going to try to get questions tonight.
Laura Tudor says, I'm terrified of the messaging the last 2 nights has given suburban white women the excuse they were looking for to go ahead and vote for him again, that they still fervently support Trump despite what polls say. What are your thoughts? Signed, a helpless Alabama voter.
Beth, I think that one's yours.
Yeah, I think I've similarly been concerned that the messaging, if somebody was to just tune in just for that moment, and that's all they're getting of Republicans, that they might walk away from hearing Nikki Haley's speech or hearing Tim Scott's speech and think, oh, this is not as bad as everybody says it is. I think I should just vote for Trump again. And that, I think, first and foremost, is the biggest problem with some of these Republicans who say that they don't support what Trump's doing, but they're standing there to make it okay for people to vote. That is calculated, is an effort. And I have been that person in the Republican Party. I've been the person that gets tapped to go up there and make people feel okay, that this is not a party or this is not a president that's working against women, that's working against people of color. I've been that face before, so I know that it's attractive and appealing, and I know there's a reason that those speeches are the way they are. But I think the thing to remember is that you have to keep calling that out. And you have to make sure that the people around you, the people watching with you, understand that this is all a show. This is all a game, that they're using women, they're using people of color to do exactly that, to make it seem okay to vote for Trump. But that doesn't change anything about the policies or the record of what they've done in the past.
Perfect. Thank you.
Penny Mayfield says, I'm so worried about the post office. What is going on now with this issue?
Jennifer, do you feel up to an update on that?
Sure. again, Congress is investigating. Both the Senate and the House actually raked the Postmaster General, Louis DeJoy, over the coals for the incompetence, for his lack of knowledge, for his cavalier attitude about service. He seems to think that he can fulfill his obligation simply by saving money. And I suppose if they never delivered a single letter or a single package, they would save all kinds of money. But of course, the post office is a service. It's the only service really specified in the Constitution. So the question is, what's going to happen here? And there are really two strains of thought. One is that the post office, as bad as it has become, is a huge volume business, and that they literally deliver 181 million pieces of mail a day on average. That's over 5 billion pieces of mail every month. And the optimists would say, listen, the number of people who are going to vote by mail, as opposed to voting early or voting on election day or voting by mail and then walking it in, is a relatively small amount given the volume of the post office. And therefore, you don't really have to freak out that the post office is going to screw up the election. I have a slightly modified view, and that is we are very fortunate to have gotten this warning 2 months before the election. That has given people the opportunity to prepare. That's why almost every Democratic speaker that we heard last week said, this is what you do. You need a plan. Can you vote early? Can you walk in your ballot? Do you have a plan for voting? And so I think it's going to take some extreme mobilization on the part of the Democrats to give people a whole variety of choices. About 3 or 4 months ago, the issue was, would the post office have enough time? And now the question is, how do you make sure your vote, whether it's sent to the post office or not, gets counted? And I would say the single most important piece of advice I can give people, if you cannot physically walk your ballot into a voting office, to a government office, at least send it back the second you fill it out, and when you get it, hopefully on the same day. That will spread out the workload, that will ease the process. There is less likelihood of ballots being rejected, ballots being lost, ballots being uncounted, and that here you have to really help the post office do their job. So I think it's going to be really a citizen effort to get this across the finish line. And of course, we have to appreciate that now the Republicans are starting to get upset because their voting by mail operation now, lo and behold, looks terrible. And so they are having a mixed message problem trying to get their people, particularly older people, to vote by mail because they're afraid they're not going to show up. So sometimes it seems that the side of justice, the side of truth, has all the problems and the other guys have all of the advantages. And I would say that in this case, the Republicans have some problems of their own.
Jennifer, I just want to add one thing, because I was ringing this alarm back in April as we were dealing with postponed primaries. As someone who's worked and been down in the bowels of boards of elections in multiple states, I will tell you the bigger concern, believe it or not, because of all the data that Jennifer just shared with us in processing the mail, is not getting just the mail in. It's all the back office work that has been tripled, quadrupled, sometimes 10 times the amount. And you add that the states are all broke now because they've been dealing with the coronavirus. They can't hire even close to what they would have in any other presidential year. So the reason it's going to take weeks is not necessarily the post office, it's the back office. And that's why the funding, it was so critical for states, and that it be targeted specifically for Board of Elections.
All of that's so smart and so critical, but I enjoy the fun fact that to share with your friends and family that Donald Trump votes by mail. I mean, the guy go out there and excoriate the whole idea. Donald Trump votes by mail. Ron, what did we learn? What did we find in our, we were just talking about this on a meeting recently, some of the data that we put together at the Lincoln Project about mail-in votes, percentages and timelines.
Yeah, so we believe that somewhere between 70 to 90% of all ballots cast in our battleground states will be via mail, 70 to 90%. And it's very likely that upwards of 50% of those ballots will have been cast by the time the second debate happens, which is the second week in October, which means an enormous number of these votes will be in and cast and done sitting somewhere secure, hopefully by October 15th.
Right. And my big message on voting is just make a plan today. And no one wants to ask you to go out and put your life in danger for this. And people have a lot of concern about viruses and germs and everything else. Figure out today, what is your plan? Bring a mask, bring gloves, bring a snack. Once you get on that line, don't get off. And once you are on that line, they cannot legally close their polling place. So, be aware of your rights. Have your Secretary of State's phone number saved in your cell phone. But more importantly, if you're able to vote by mail or bring it in ahead of time, all the points have already been made. And go to lincolnproject.us/vote. And everything you need to know about how to vote where you live will be there. lincolnproject.us/vote.
Yes.
So I would also add that if you're young and of good health, please volunteer to be a poll worker.
Yes.
The vast majority of poll workers are elderly, and they are unlikely to want to sit there, and you have to have the same people sitting there all day long. So it's like a 14-hour day, 16-hour day. And with the concern about COVID, a lot of those people very rightfully are not going to want to sit there. So if you're young, if you're able-bodied, if you have a college kid, if you have any young adults that get them to sign up and to act as poll workers for that day.
They can bring their own sanitizer. They will use a lack of poll workers as a reason to shut down more polling places, which will make the lines longer at other polling places, which will make it more likely that people will either not vote or go home before they vote. So that's really important as well. Okay, Ron, what's next?
And something that our political team has flagged is that there is already a massive nationwide shortage of poll workers. We already know that. Frankie Rosenthal says, so Trump said slow down the testing and now that's happening. Are people really going to believe this is over because less testing, less cases? Why has he been given so much power? And I would add to that, a couple of speakers last night at the convention were referring to the coronavirus in the past tense.
In the past tense. Beth, why don't you start with that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think why he's been given so much power, this is something that the Republican Party, as it is now, has let him have this much power. There are people that could stand up and say something different. The entire Senate could come out and contradict what he's saying. People have alternative information, but they've been bullied into staying silent. So a lot of the problem that we're seeing right now is the problem we've seen on every other issue that we've had, is that there are people there in positions to stand up and say something and do something, and they're refusing to do it because they're either afraid or they're complicit and they want to retain their power. And I think that is up to each of us to start questioning more often. I think that's a great question to ask in this forum, but it's a great question to continue asking elsewhere, is why does this information keep changing? And when other people, other senators have more information, why are they just letting Donald Trump be the mouthpiece here?
And you know what, that testing question is a good one for people, the folks who are asking the life question. And for anybody on the call, frankly, who is a Republican who's still trying to persuade some of your, friends and family of this, it's a good example of how Donald Trump works on everything. Remember everything he has said about testing. The reason we have so many positives is because we do more testing. No, we have so many positives because more Americans have been infected. And the reason that they've slowed down the testing is 100% a political reason, so that the numbers that are reported are lower as we approach the election, so that your friends and family who are not sure about whether or not to vote for Donald Trump can be reassured that it's okay to do so. That's why they're doing it. I highly recommend that you go out when we're done here and find a brand new ad from the Lincoln Project called The Wall. It's very moving. And for those of your friends and family who want to talk about the pandemic management, that's a good one to send to them. And it reminds me, Ron, do we have something special to share with our guests tonight as far as the video goes? Do we have a new ad? We're supposed to have a new ad to share?
I don't think so.
Oh gosh, yes, you were.
Let's go to another question.
Let's go to another question.
Okay. Kimberly Karch asks, what are your thoughts on the seeming acceptance of QAnon followers in the Republican Party? Do you ever see the party bouncing back from that, or will the party continue sliding to the kooks and conspiracy theorists?
Susan, I've heard you on TV a couple of times. Kooks and conspiracy theorists, is that the future of the party?
If Trump's reelected, probably. Kevin McCarthy has said he has no problem seating some of these members who have won their primaries and will most likely win their seats to Congress. I think that at some point, again, if Donald Trump loses, we get to also hold other people accountable, which goes into the issue of defeating Trump and Trumpism. Trumpism is all those people that enable Donald Trump. So we will have to call them all to task. I do believe if Donald Trump's not there, I think some of these leaders will be less likely to be afraid of him and maybe do some reasonable things, but that doesn't mean we should let them off the hook. The disturbing part is there's always been kooks and conspiracy theorists on both parties, but they've been out in the fringes. Now we have a group that's moving in, and that is beyond disturbing. But again, that goes to the question of our institutions holding? Is our media being treated fairly? Are we able to communicate these ideas? And hopefully, when Donald Trump is defeated and those with him, we can get back to some normalcy and these people will return to the fringes.
Exactly. Donald Trump has made it okay to be bigoted, misogynist, and nuts. And
only if you support him, though. That's his thing. They must be okay.
That's right. That's right. If you don't support him, then the the standard's very different.
Horrible.
What's next, Ron?
Maggie Grant, why is the Rubio report being ignored? How do we get Congress to take responsibility for what is in the report and take action?
Jennifer, that's yours for sure.
I'm sorry, the question was about which report?
The
Rubio report, the Senate Intelligence.
The Rubio report, right.
Yeah.
I would encourage people, it's actually online, and you can just go through, this is the intelligence report, it's the 5th volume of the Senate Intelligence Committee that was bipartisan, was led by a Republican, no left-wing, softy peacenik, but Richard Burr from North Carolina, who looked in granular detail. It's online. You can go to any page in it and you will see a level of microscopic detail of who said what to whom, who met with whom. And the report was voted on by 14-1 on that committee to accept its findings. And what it says is there were an extraordinary number of connections, as we all have been saying till we're blue in the face, between the Trump campaign and Russian operatives. And in fact, even worse than we found out in the Mueller report. And I would add that many of us now have some concern about why Mueller didn't fully surface all of these issues. But the evidence is there. The evidence is more damning than it ever was. And if there's really no evidence of anything, I don't think 14-1 would be the vote on this report. Rubio at this point, I think, will say anything about anything to maintain his standing with the right wing and with the president specifically. But in fact, no other campaign in history has ever welcomed, ever invited a foreign power. The report cites, again, the Trump Tower meeting, Trump's own public invitation for the Russians to help, the connection between he and Roger Stone and the WikiLeaks, which is a Russian cutout. The evidence is there. And I think what we are seeing is a recasting or a rerun of the impeachment hearings, in which you can put all the evidence in the world in front of these people and they will continue to deny reality. And that is the sickness that's infected the Republican Party, that facts to them don't matter. All they have to do is come up with some rationalization for not crossing the president, and they will do it. And the consequences for them have to be, as Jennifer has been saying, at the ballot box where these people are voted out. And not all of them are going to be on the ballot in 2020, but a lot of them are then going to be on the ballot in 2022. And I think the most dramatic statement that the American people can say is, we don't like this gaslighting of the American people. We don't like a non-factual style of governing. We don't like a sense that democracy is some kind of trinket, some kind of cover for simply power grabs. And that has to be reflected in the results of the election, the House, the Senate, and the presidency.
That's a great answer. Very comprehensive. Ron, what else?
Yep, Marty Everett. I'm most excited by this group, its vision and strategies, and want to be a part of its effort. As a 66-year-old suburban woman, I am in the thick of the prime target group. Am I welcome? I left the Republican Party in the 80s and could be described as progressively left-wing.
Progressively left-wing? I think that's awesome. I love people who are just, this is who I am. And of course you're welcome. Yes, the Lincoln Project and every coalition under that umbrella is about saving the future of the country. I'm sorry, about saving our country for future generations. And the core message here is that the only way we do that is if we all set aside our partisan differences and our political debates and all of that for this moment, and say we're going to do what is necessary to defeat Donald Trump. So you and I, what was that woman's first name? I missed it.
Marty.
Murray. So you and I can go out and have a cup of coffee in November when this is over and debate the best way to solve the immigration crisis, the best way to bring healthcare accessibility to every American, and what is the best way to limit government or to expand government. We can have those conversations forever and be friends while we do it. But for this moment between today and Election Day, I'm putting all of that aside. It is okay with me that Americans disagree about policy and the best way to solve problems, as long as we agree that we need to come together to solve problems. And more than any other moment in the history of our country, we need to do it now. And that's really the answer to so many of these questions, Ron, that have been coming in about the report, about the election, about the post office. Our checks and balances are being tested to their greatest limit that maybe, I won't say ever, I don't, but certainly in my lifetime. And I think that what's going to be tested on Election Day truly is the part of our American tradition that is stated, we the people. Are we the people going to put aside our differences, come together, make sure we vote no matter what, demand accountability and integrity in the way those ballots are counted, and stand together right through until January 20th of next year, when we know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are sworn into office. This is a test of us as much as it is a test of anything else.
Jennifer, while you were talking, I had CJ pull some strings behind the scenes, and I have that app.
That's terrific.
CJ
and Ron are the digital masters, man. They are the smartest. We were having a conversation earlier today about sharing a new ad with all of you for the first time on this town hall. And it's a big part of our messaging for women. It's a big part of our effort to really activate and turn out those suburban women. So we're really happy to be able to share it with all of you right now.
Dear daughters, we want so much for you. We want you to grow up proud and strong in an America that believes in you, believes in your worth, believes in your potential to be whomever you want to be. Free of name calling.
Crazy Nancy. She was nastier than even Pocahontas. That fat, ugly face of hers.
Free of body shaming.
She would not be my first choice, that I can tell you.
Free of bullying.
That's okay. I know you're not thinking. You never do.
I'm sorry? Where ambition is applauded, not vilified, because ambition is not a dirty word. Where confidence is celebrated, not torn down. Where there is no height you cannot reach. We want you to be proud to be nasty. Nasty isn't a four-letter word. It's who you are. Strong, determined, brave. This is the America we want for you. for you, dear daughters. The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Oh, good. Yay. So I had to tell you, the first time I saw that ad, it really moved me. It really moved me. I have 5 children, one of whom is a daughter. But I'm one of, I have 6 sisters. I just felt like it's a really powerful message. And I invite everybody on this call, when you go out on social media, especially on Twitter tonight, that you talk about how you feel about that ad. And our hashtag is #LincolnWomen. And also at Project Lincoln, but our hashtag is Lincoln Women. And I believe that as we conclude in a couple of minutes, Ron will be launching our Facebook group as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. I've got one more question, and then we're going to queue up an email, and I'll explain that in a minute. And this question comes from Martha Freeman. And she says, I've had a former colleague reach out and say that while we're on opposite sides of the fence, she respects me and would like to have a discussion about why I support Biden Harris. I said, absolutely, but wow, where do I start? And Jennifer, you and I have talked a lot about how stories are the most powerful thing that a lot of voters have. So maybe, I think maybe everybody
Absolutely. Well, I think I say to everybody, whether they want to know how to talk to a friend or write an op-ed or a letter to the editor or anything else, is tell your story. You know, I could sit here and fill this whole hour with stories about my daughters, my sons, about my mother, the experiences I've had as a caretaker, as a state chairman, as a candidate. But your story is what is credible. That's what's personal, what connects with people. And I know I want to make sure we leave enough time for everything. But Beth, you should take, a minute and a half right now and tell your story. You have a really powerful story about the election and the RNC, I think a little bit, that I think could be really moving for people right now.
Yeah, I think the key here is, and just in answering your question, is you can come up with all the facts and figures in the world, but that's not what really moves people. It is being able to see the real things that have happened to people and the real things that have happened to you. And if you can express that to others, I have certainly found that people will change their minds. And in my case in particular, I was the House Minority Leader, which is the House Republican leader in Hawaii, the youngest woman in the country to hold that position. And that gave me what I thought was a position of power, at least an opportunity to set some policy in the Republican Party. They try to make it more moderate. And I had concerns about Donald Trump, and I spoke out. There were complaints against me, official complaints trying to remove me as leader. And when it came time for our state convention, I needed to speak up, and I needed to say to the crowd that I wasn't ready to support this ticket. I didn't think I could support him as president. And I knew that people were going to be angry, and I just wanted to have a discussion. So I brought it up and told the crowd what I was thinking. They booed me for 15 minutes and left there, though, with this story that people then could see what was happening, right? I could have kept telling people over and over again that the Republican Party is changing, that this element that people think is very small is actually pretty big, and Donald Trump's gonna win. I could have kept saying that, but people saw it on that day with the booing and the insults and the racism and the sexism. They saw it, and that moved people. And when we moved forward into the election, my story is that I won Minority Leader again. I won my seat again. And I did the same thing. I had vowed to continue to speak out because I did not believe that Donald Trump represented what Republican values should be. And I thought I could stand in the gap because this was always supposed to be a party that would allow that kind of disagreement. So I spoke at the Women's March. I said a lot of the things I said before. In some ways, I said it more nicely than I had before. I said that kindness and respect should win. I talked about what the little girls in all of our families saw that election cycle. And the Republican Party very quickly, both nationally and locally, told me it was time to shut up. He was the president now. There would be no more disagreement. And they would love to keep me in the position that I'm in because I had some value, but I had to promise not to speak out against the president again. And I just think of all the reasons to vote against this president, the very fact that there's such control over our individuality is not what Republicans are supposed to believe in. It's not what I believe in. it's the reason to vote against them. So I guess to answer your question, it is, I'm sure you have your story like that you can explain to somebody else, and help them understand.
There's just one thing about that story that she's not finishing up with, is that she's dedicated to public service, and she would not be forced out of doing what she thought is her public duty. Isn't that right, Beth?
That is true. Yeah. And I, for the purposes also of like what we're talking about here today, I don't think that any party should stop you from being able to do that service. That is what we are all elected to do. Yeah.
And all of us on this call have all confronted, in some cases aggressive, and for me, physical, assault from Republicans who have not enjoyed the position that we've taken or the way that we've expressed our Republicanism. And all I can say is that Lincoln women are not quiet women, and the world better just get used to it. The party better just get used to that. So, okay, Ron, do we have time for one question?
Well, we do, but I'm going to answer about this email. What's that?
I said, it's 6 minutes. We've got lots of time.
So we actually have lots of questions about what we can do, what people can do. Brenda James says, will there be a Lincoln Women Facebook page? I think the word about our secret Facebook pages is now out. Amy Zorn says, what can women in small towns do to get out the disaffected Republican vote locally? So I just want to use these questions to springboard into the email that CJ is about to send out to everybody who RSVP'd to this event, which will contain a link to a closed Facebook group where our political team will be organizing this Lincoln Women Coalition. The link will take you to the closed Facebook group, and there will be a couple of questions that you'll need to answer in order to get access. Answer those questions, and they'll let you in, and that's where we'll be organizing this coalition and asking very specifically some tasks that you may be willing to take on for the Lincoln Project. So keep an eye out for that email. It should be coming right now if it hasn't already. And Jennifer, do you want to close us out?
I will close us out, but I'm going to close us out by asking you to ask one more question. I want to make sure we get one more person, and I'll close us out with the answer. How's that?
All right, let's see. Okay, this one is also very common. Anne Strickland, we get a lot of these. If Trump wins, would you consider forming a third party composed of Republicans who do not support his brand of the party?
Yes. And I haven't always said that quickly and that easily. If Trump wins, if Donald Trump wins, then that tells me something about my party that even to this moment, I'm trying to believe is not true. I keep looking at, I keep hoping, I guess, that, we know Donald Trump has this 34% base that he's never going to lose. And every candidate does. Richard Nixon left the White House with, his head bowed and still had, some small base of support that was always going to be there. So if Donald Trump wins and there's some sort of overwhelming Republican push for him, I think that changes the field politically for parties dramatically coming out of that. But I think the important thing to remember and to think about between now and Election Day is that this is not about saving a party. Even for me, I have refused to leave the party because I have been so directly and aggressively bullied. I feel like if I decide to leave the party, it'll be after the election on my own terms, because right now you can all kiss my you-know-what. I will not be bullied out of the party that I have embraced, that I believed embraced the founding principles of our nation. And I will not be bullied into not speaking up against those in our party who are embracing bigotry and misogyny and this us against them-ism that has become so prevalent. I will not allow myself or the millions of others of Republicans that I know stand with me to be silenced in this moment. So whether or not the party survives after Election Day, it's not that I don't care, but I don't care right now. That is not on my list of things that I lie in bed worrying about at night. So more important than anything at all, is that we all come together in this moment. We cannot win if we don't come together. And I'm telling everybody on this call that it is going to be women who push Joe Biden over the finish line on this. You can search Lincoln Project on YouTube and find all of the really powerful ads that we have made. And as we continue to make more, they will be up there. You know which ad is best to go to which of your friends and family that are still undecided. Pick one and send it along to them. Make sure to respond to that email that's coming into your box right now and join our Facebook group, because we have plans for you. We are going to organize you and activate you and make you take part in this and become a really vital, valuable contributor to what we're going to do on election day. And the most important thing is to tell your story, to be sincere, to be open, to be honest, and be unafraid. You have to be unafraid. Be loud, be unafraid. Thank you, Jennifer Rubin. Thank you, Susan Del Percio. Thank you, Beth Fukumoto. Thank you, Mr. Ron Steslow. And to every single one of you who have tuned in tonight, I am so grateful that you care this much, that you are dedicated, that I know you're going to get involved and activated. We all love our country more than we love our party. And it's good to see that so many thousands of you do too. Thank you so much, everybody. Please stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you for tuning in.